Hey everyone, I just recorded the last video and I realized I had the wrong aesthetic on and my microphone was way too loud, so I have to retake this video. Anyway, I am really glad that you're here. Thank you for listening to me. I am grateful for all of you who have shown up, and that's actually my first point when it comes to being a good math teacher and encouraging students to do math. You want to make sure that the kids are encouraged, and everything that I have done, I have seen so much improvement with my students, and the one thing is telling them that I'm grateful for them. I told them every single day that I was grateful for them, and a little bit of a backstory. I needed to drop out of school due to sickness, and because of my associate's degree, I was able to get an emergency substitute certificate that varies state by state and by your school, by school district. So this isn't across the board guaranteed. This isn't just like something that you can do if you have an associate's degree. But I was able to demonstrate my teaching skills because of my tutoring experience, and I had so many notes from how I tutored students, and I learned a unanimous decision. And so I was very grateful for that opportunity. And it was very heart crushing to let go of my dreams of being a chemical engineer right away. But being a teacher fulfilled me in such a way that, I'm not kidding you when I tell you my hormones were reined in. I used to just cry all the time just at the drop of a hat, and I couldn't tell why, because I know about hormone sequences in the body, in the female body. And I'm like, why am I crying right now? I should be on the up and up. And it would just be kind of terrible until I started teaching. And I don't know what it was, but dealing with teenagers who are already hormonal and crazy in such a way. And they weren't crazy. They were just kids. But it helped to rein me in, and it gave me such fulfillment being in that parental role as a teacher. And I don't care what any of you say, being a teacher is such a parental role. If you teach right and you parent right, it is the exact same job. And I enjoyed that parental part of teaching so much because you get to build that trust with the kids, and whenever they come to you for help, and it can be outside of school, it could be within just that classroom setting. It's very fulfilling that they see you as a source of wisdom. And that to me is very beautiful. So I told them every single day that I'm grateful for them. They have purpose in this world, and they give me purpose by existing in that classroom. And I'm tearing up already. But I said that every day to my first students because they meant that much to me. Especially in that time of need where I felt like everything was crashing down. Another thing that I like to do, besides that, I want to focus on encouragement, because there is nothing that will crush a person more than discouragement. And when a kid does not know that they are capable of doing math, they just won't try. And it's not so much the fact that they're lazy or they just don't have the aptitude for math. I feel like if you're an adult telling kids that they just don't have the aptitude for math, you're a piece of crap. And you just don't have an aptitude for math, and you're projecting that onto the kids. And I 100% stand by that. And if you're a parent telling your kid that, you're a piece of crap. But you need to encourage these kids, because math is a skill just like anything else. And some people may have an aptitude for it right away, but eventually it becomes difficult for everyone. And so just like any other skill, like doing laundry, riding a bike, driving a car, those take time, those take practice, and those take guidance and reassurance and encouragement. And I see math the same way, because I've had to do a lot of math. And if I have the patience to edit, these are all the math classes that I had to take. And I'm pretty experienced with this. I'm not a math major. I wanted to be. But I've had to take a lot of math classes, and in my science classes, there's just a lot of math altogether because it's engineering, so it's all math. And so there is a lot to deal with encouragement. So you have to tell them, like, you're doing a good job. Keep on pressing forward. And one of the ways that I encourage my students is to remind them about what math is really all about. And you might think it's so that they can become good engineers, that they can become good scientists in the world, and that's not really it. Math is here to help us practice good judgment skills while giving us the space to make bad judgment calls, while no one relies on us for those judgment calls. I remind my students of this because this is something my dad taught me, and my grandmother was a superintendent in another country. And I remember asking my dad in 2nd grade, I said, Dad, why do I have to practice like this simple math where it says like 5 is greater than 3, 8 is greater than 5? Like, why do I have to practice doing that? I already know that 8's greater than 5. Why do I have to write it down? And my dad told me that because he learned from his mom, who was an educator, and my grandfather, like, they were a powerhouse couple. They started schools everywhere. But my dad taught me that it's because you need to practice judgment skills and actually seeing and calling out what it is and saying like, oh, 5 and 3 is less than 5. That practices your judgment skills so that you are more capable and confident to make good judgment calls later on. So I tell that to my kids all the time. I remember saying this to one of my students who he was laughing at himself because he failed biology and he took it twice, or this is his 3rd time, and I'm like, good for you for persevering and not giving up. And it looked like nobody ever told him that before. I'm like, good for you. And I told him, like, look, math is not just here so that you can practice math and it tortures you. Math tortures everyone, okay? As someone who went through engineering school, I'm afraid of Algebra 2. I had to teach Algebra 2, and that was scary to go back through that. I'm traumatized from Algebra 2 my first time around. But I told my student who had failed biology and math, I said, look, math is not just so that it can torture you. Math is not here just to torture you. Math is here so that whenever you need to make good decisions later on, you're confident in them because you already practiced those judgment skills now. The only thing that you're embarrassed about is just your wrong answer on your piece of paper. Nobody else saw it, and even if I saw it, I'm not going to make fun of you for that. That's something that I teach you. And in order for you to have good critical thinking skills and creative problem solving skills, you need to be given a space where you can fail so that you know how to get back up again. And also, you need to know how to handle stress. You need to know how to handle yourself. You need to be self-aware of your own methods of handling stress, because later on in life, when you're a manager of a fast food chain, of retail, and I try to give them like immediate things that they can do right away. So I give them things that are immediate and applicable, where they know that, like, okay, well, I can see myself in this position. And I tell them, like, when you're a manager of a store, and people are depending on you to budget their hours, they're banking on you to make sure that you can budget their hours well and budget it right and write their checks well and accurately, because they're depending on that to pay their bills. And so when your decisions are now involving a lot of people, the stakes are higher because more people are depending on you to be right, and they're entrusting you to be right about this. When you're responsible for a family, either just for a spouse or for a spouse and children, they are depending on you to make good decisions. And so as your teacher, I need to make sure that you are confident in making good decisions right now. And I need to make sure that you have the space to fail where nobody depends on you, just yourself, just your grade. And in the grand scheme of things, what is a test grade? What's a homework grade, right? And I'm not doing that to trap them into failing. Why would I do that? That just makes me look bad. But I want them to be encouraged so that they realize, for the people who are struggling in class, they realize, like, oh, hey, okay, if I can struggle, if the main point of this is to figure out how I struggle, then I'm already experienced in struggling. Okay, I got this. I'm going to keep on trying. And that's the thing that I try to drive in my students, is the fact that I want them to keep on trying on their own. I don't have the energy to keep on encouraging them, like, oh, you can do it. I make them realize that they're responsible for their future, but also I'm responsible for making sure that they have the skills and that they have an environment where they can build their future. And so I want to hone in on that math is not there just for the math skills to become a good engineer. Engineering school is there to make you a good engineer. Math skills overall make sure that you're a good person, where you can make really decisive, accurate predictions, accurate judgment calls, where people can trust you. And that trustworthiness is something that is very, very valuable. It's valuable in all business applications, and every single business transaction is a relationship, and you don't want to break relationships. So that's why I love teaching high school, because it gives me the opportunity to make young adults into great adults. I love teaching little kids, okay, like, teaching them how to hold scissors and how to be respectful to each other, like that. It's cute whenever they're sneezing in each other's hair and pulling each other's hair. Like, it's a little bit overwhelming for me, but it's still kind of adorable because they're just children. But it's a big task to teach little kids how to be human. I am not as equipped for that. I am much more equipped to take humans, people who already know not to pull each other's hair and punch each other in the ribs, and make sure that they are good people and that they know how to make good business transactions, how to be a good person. And what to look out for in jobs. I love teaching high schoolers about what to look out for when it comes to bad employers and good employers. And just because they're an employer doesn't mean that what they do is right. But that's another video. Another thing that I like to do, and this is specifically for trigonometry class. The next thing I'll talk about is in algebra. But what I like to do in trigonometry, and this is specifically for intro to trig, like when you're at the tail end of geometry doing trig stuff. And it's talking about angles, and you can think about the word angle like perspective, right? So it's like, well, from my angle, I think that's a problem. And then the person is like, well, from my point of view, what you're talking about is a problem. And so I like to use that in a sense where, in the United States, we have the bicameral government system. It's not really government system, sorry. I don't have the right vernacular. I apologize. But this is specifically for the people who are just like my friends that I met in politics, and every single one of them told me, I wish I could be a scientist. I just wasn't good enough at math. And I'm like, who told you that you were not good enough at math? Like, who told you? I need to slap them in the face. Like, who told you that? Because I'm afraid of algebra too. And I studied chemical engineering. Like, I am deeply afraid of algebra. I would much rather do calculus than algebra. Algebra is scary because it makes sure you need to be like paying attention to every single little thing. Calculus kind of has its steps built into the problem, so you don't need to do as much thinking as you do in algebra, where like nothing is built into the problem. Like you have to know rules that aren't in front of you. Anyway. I was just so appalled by the fact that my friends did not believe in themselves, so they didn't pursue science degrees or science pathways. And I mean, they're fulfilling things that they are meant to fulfill, but I was so heartbroken over the fact that they did not believe in themselves. So I use trig to make sure that all of my students who are just like my friends, they find themselves, they find an application that is available to them, that they find an application to their interests in math. So with trig, you'll have a triangle, right? And I'll pull up my engineering paper. So you've got your triangle, and I will take a marker here that's a little bit bigger. You have your right triangle, right? Here's your right triangle. There is the right triangle. And then you've got this angle right here. We're going to call that alpha. And then we got this angle right here. Let's call that gamma. Okay? So we've got alpha and gamma. And so here, I'm going to say, we'll just call these ones X, Y, and R. And you'll find reasons why I did that, because the hypotenuse of a triangle is actually a radius, but we'll get into that in another video. But X, Y, and R. So if we know about the sine of an angle, right? Let's just talk about the sine of alpha. The sine of alpha is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So that's going to equal, the sine of alpha equals X divided by R. right? And let's talk about the sine of gamma. The sine of gamma is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so that is y over r. But let's take a look at the cosines of the respective angles. So cosine of alpha, I'm going to put this over here. The cosine of alpha is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, right? So that's going to be y over r. And the cosine of gamma is also the adjacent over the hypotenuse, but that's, from this perspective, x over r. So notice here that the sine of alpha equals the cosine of gamma. From alpha's point of view, it's saying, oh my gosh, this is a problem, you need to fix this. And from gamma's perspective, it's like, whoa, you're talking about a different problem, you need to fix this problem. But here, sine of alpha equals the cosine of gamma. It equals the same thing. They both equal x over r, but they process it differently. Think about Democrats and Republicans in our country. You're talking about this. This is an issue. You need to address this. What do you mean that this is an issue? You need to address that. They're all still part of the United States government, but they are processing issues differently from their perspectives, their points of view, their angles. And I want to show them that there's connections between things and just within the triangle itself, but also that they can find their interests in mathematics and it's not separated. I have seen way too many teachers separate math and art and other things from math because they don't have the creativity to know that it is present, that mathematics is present in artwork, that mathematics is present in political science and beyond statistics. And so I do that extra step because I want the kids to know that they are capable and that someone is there to make sure that they are able to understand math, and that it's not just like if you can't understand it in the textbook, you just don't understand it. No, there's a lot of really crappy textbooks out in the world written by antisocial nerds, and I say that with full disrespect. Like, you're very antisocial, you don't know how to talk to people, and now you publish these textbooks thinking that people will understand it. And I'm not saying that you're not doing a good job, but as an adult, you need to perform. Your effort is not what people want. It's the performance. It's the quality. And you can say, well, I tried so hard to build this plane. Yeah, well, if you're off by a tolerance of 2 inches, no one's going to buy from you, no matter how hard you try. And so for students, for children, I have a lot of patience because they're just kids. This is their first time seeing algebra, their first time seeing trig. But for adults, that's why, like, I'll even crap talk the textbook right in front of them, and I'll say, like, who wrote this? Like, what? I would never even put this in front of a college student. Who wrote this? And I mean, it's up to that level that person who published it was able to communicate, but they just didn't communicate good enough. And so I try to make sure that the kids are able to understand it because I know my students, and I put in the effort to know them, to make sure that they know that I am a source of wisdom where they can come up to me at any point in time. And if they need anything, if they need anything to be answered, or they just have a question, or they're just curious about something, whether it's about school or it's about home life, relationships, I'm here to talk about it. And that's what makes me a good teacher, is because I care. I really do care about my students. I care about their futures. And that's why I focus so much on encouragement, because they need to know that they can do math on their own. I'm not going to do it for them. Nobody's going to do it for them, but they need to be encouraged, because eventually people are going to depend on the decisions that they make, and I want to make sure that they feel encouraged enough to make these decisions on their own. When it comes to algebra, this is towards the end of Algebra 1, where the kids are getting ready to go into geometry, and I personally hated proofs, and the curriculum changed from the time when I was in high school to the time when I taught high school, and proofs used to be just like the first semester of high school of geometry, and then after that you could just work on shapes, which I loved. But now proofs are like all the way throughout the year, and I hated that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm still stuck with this. I thought I could escape this, and now I've got to teach it. Now I got to pretend to like it. But It was really funny. So I told my students, and I don't know how I had this creativity right then and there, but towards the end of algebra, I tell my students, I'm like, if you love to argue, geometry's the thing for you. Because proofs are really like, it's like a lawyer's, it's like a lawyer making a case saying like, this is why this is this, because we have all the proof that these two things are connected, and triangle ABC equals triangle DEF because of all these laws. And because of all these laws, you have your proof and you have your commentary. And I go through things like what's conjecture, right? You'll hear conjecture a lot in political circles. And so what do people say conjecture is? It's just hearsay. So when you have a conjecture in math, it's just something that you just came up of because that's something you observed, right? Now we're going to try to prove it. And big syllable words are scary, new words are scary, and that's something that I want the kids to get over. So when they're in algebra, I get them ready for geometry, and I say like, hey, get ready to argue. If you love arguing, geometry is the thing for you, because honestly, I was scared of proofs. And I want these kids to have a better approach and feel like they can actually attack the math and master this math and be really, really good at it. Because being discouraged, math is the number one discourager out there, and I want to make sure that these kids know that they are capable of so much more. So anyway, I hope that this video helped you out. If you need any other tips for when it comes to teaching math or tutoring, you let me know, okay? I'll have my email out in the description. And just comment something about like, if your teacher, if you have a really good math teacher or a really, really bad math teacher, let me know in the comments about that experience, and I will see you in the next video. All right, bye guys!